Hey, fellas, I'm Robert Morgan, 55 years old, and I've got a story that'll make you rethink the people you call family. I grew up as the invisible kid, always in the shadow of my perfect brother, until a video my aunt posted revealed the ugly truth. My parents called me a leech, a parasite who'd never amount to anything. That betrayal cut deep. But it also set me free. I cut them off cold and built a life they could never imagine. Stick around to hear how I turned their words into fuel for my success. Hit that like button if you've ever been underestimated by the people who should have had your back. And let's get into this. Drop your city in the comments. I'd love to know where you're watching from. I grew up in a small town outside Portland, Oregon, in the 1970s and 80s. My older brother, James, was the golden child. 2 years older, good-looking, a natural athlete, and the star of every family gathering. He played football, led the debate team, and had a voice that could charm anyone. My parents, Frank and Linda, treated him like he was the sun, and I was just a dim star orbiting in his shadow. I was the quiet kid, always tinkering with things. Fixing old radios, building model cars, anything to keep my hands busy and my mind off the fact that I didn't fit in. James got the spotlight. I got the sidelines. My parents made it clear early on where I stood. James's birthdays were big events. Backyard barbecues with half the neighborhood. A new bike one year. A guitar the next. Mine. A store-bought cake. Maybe a card if I was lucky. Often rescheduled because it clashed with James's football practice or some school event. They poured everything into him. Private coaching, music lessons, new clothes for every competition. I once asked if I could take a mechanics class at the local community center. I loved working with my hands, but my dad laughed it off. You don't have the talent. Robert, he said, that's a waste of money. I didn't argue. I just nodded and went back to my room, where I'd secretly fix things with a toolbox my Uncle Greg gave me. I learned to disappear in that house. I'd spend hours in the attic, surrounded by my grandfather's old engineering books, teaching myself how to take apart and rebuild anything I could get my hands on. It was my escape, a place where I wasn't judged or compared to James. The only person who really saw me was Uncle Greg, my mom's younger brother. He lived 30 minutes away and always made time for me when he visited. He'd ask what I was working on, never comparing me to James. One day, he slipped me a leather-bound notebook and said, "Write down your ideas. Robert, one day, they'll be worth more than gold." I kept that notebook under my mattress, filling it with sketches of machines and dreams I didn't dare share with anyone else. Fast forward to 1988. I was 18, a senior in high school, and I'd had enough of being invisible. At a family dinner, James had just been accepted to UCLA on a partial scholarship for football. My parents were over the moon, pouring wine, toasting to his future. I sat there, gripping my fork, my chest burning. I'd been working hard too, straight A's, a part-time job at a local garage, and I'd even won a regional science fair for a small engine I'd built from scratch. I gathered my courage and spoke up. "I want to go to college too," I said, my voice steady. "I'm applying to an engineering program in state." The table went silent. James stopped smiling. My mom frowned, and my dad let out a loud, mocking laugh. "College," he said, smirking. "You're not like James. Robert, he's got talent. You need to be realistic. Maybe work at the garage full time." The laughter that followed wasn't the kind you join in on. It was the kind that stings, like a slap across the face. My mom chimed in. "College isn't for everyone. Honey, James needs to go. He's got a future. You should focus on earning a living." James didn't laugh, but he didn't defend me either. He just looked away, like I wasn't worth the effort. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor, and ran to my room, my heart pounding. That night, I stared at my report cards, my science fair certificate, the recommendation letters from my teachers. I'd walked miles to the library, studied late into the night. All for nothing. They didn't see me. They never would. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen with a stack of documents, my grades, my awards, everything I'd worked for. I slammed them on the table. "If you think I'm not good enough, read this," I said, my voice shaking with anger. My mom flipped through a few pages, her expression blank. My dad crossed his arms and shrugged. "Even if your grades are good, we don't have money for you," he said. "It all went to James," my mom added. "He needs to chase his dreams. You need to be practical." Robert. I stood there, stunned, not by their words, but by how casually they said them. Like my future was just a footnote in James's story. "So I don't get a chance?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. My dad shrugged. "We've made our decision. Don't make a scene." I turned and walked out to the backyard, clutching my wrinkled report card. a numbness spreading through me. I sat there for hours, the wind biting at my skin, until my phone rang. It was Uncle Greg. I answered, my voice breaking as I told him everything. The dinner, the laughter, how they dismissed my dreams like I was nothing. He listened quietly, then said something that changed my life. Robert, I've got some savings. I want you to use it to go to college. I was stunned. You mean it? I asked, my heart racing. I've never been more serious, he said. You're smart, hardworking, and you deserve a chance. I won't let your talent get buried. I broke down, tears of hope streaming down my face for the first time in years. The next day, I packed a suitcase. No one asked what I was doing. My mom was busy planning James's graduation party. My dad was watching TV. I stood in the living room, bag in hand, and said, I'm going to live with Uncle Greg. He's helping me go to college. My mom raised an eyebrow and smirked. Greg, he doesn't have money, I replied. That's not your concern anymore, and walked out the door. No goodbyes, no hugs. Just the sound of the door closing behind me. Uncle Greg's house was small, with a porch covered in ivy and an old rocking chair I used to sit in as a kid. He hugged me tight, the smell of his pipe tobacco wrapping around me like a warm blanket. This is your home now, he said. That summer, we worked on my college applications together. He drove me to counseling sessions, helped me write essays, and celebrated with me when I got accepted into the engineering program at Washington State University. Now, fellas, if you've ever been dismissed by your own family, drop a comment below. Just say I've been there. I'll read everyone and reply. Keep listening, because I'm going to tell you how a single video exposed their true feelings, and why I cut them off for good. I started college in the fall of 1989, stepping off the university bus with a pounding heart. The campus was huge, tall buildings, endless signs, and a buzz of energy that both overwhelmed and excited me. I wasn't afraid, though. I'd gotten here on my own terms, with the support of the one person who believed in me, Uncle Greg. I took a deep breath, the wind sweeping through my hair, and whispered to myself, Robert, you've finally begun. Over the next 4 years, I threw myself into my studies. I didn't just want to get through college. I wanted to rise above. I worked part-time at the campus auto shop, joined the engineering club, and led every group project I could. When you know your family buried your dreams right in front of you, you don't let yourself fail. During my sophomore year, I heard through Uncle Greg that James had dropped out of UCLA, not because of grades or lack of motivation, but because he'd gotten a girl pregnant, only to find out she was also seeing his teammate. He came home, acting like nothing had happened, but there was no wedding, no big future my parents had planned for him. They panicked. But James, he ended up working at a local diner, the same place my dad once told me I should settle for. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I didn't gloat. I was too focused on my own path. I graduated with honors in 1993, standing on stage with my diploma, looking out at the crowd. Uncle Greg was there, waving, tears in his eyes. My parents weren't, James wasn't, but I didn't feel empty. Uncle Greg was my whole world. After graduation, I landed a job at a manufacturing firm in Portland called Precision Dynamics, known for its high-end machinery and innovative designs. I started as a junior engineer, working 12-hour days, designing parts, troubleshooting production lines, and learning to negotiate with suppliers like a pro. 2 years later, when my manager retired, I was promoted to lead engineer at 26 years old, overseeing a team and $1 million production line. The first thing I did with my new salary was buy Uncle Greg a gift, a top-of-the-line smartphone with a big screen and high-resolution camera. He nearly fell over when I handed it to him. This is too fancy. Robert, he said, laughing. Not more than what you've done for me, I replied, my eyes burning. We spent the afternoon setting up his accounts, and soon he was posting videos of his woodworking projects. Gaining thousands of followers in weeks, I kept in touch with my family, but it was distant. In 1995, my mom called, asking if I could help James get a job at Precision Dynamics. He's trying to change. Robert, she said, he needs a chance. I felt a pang of pity, not for James, but for myself, because a part of me still wanted them to see my worth. I agreed, pulling strings to get him an entry-level role in the warehouse. To my surprise, James showed up on time, worked hard, and got along with the team. He wasn't the golden boy anymore. He was just a guy trying to make it, maybe for his kid, maybe out of fear of failing again. We kept things professional, never close, but not hostile either. By 2000, I'd climbed the ranks at Precision Dynamics. The company wanted me to lead the launch of 3 new production facilities in Seattle, Boise, and Sacramento as regional director. My salary doubled, and I rented a small apartment in Seattle with big windows overlooking the harbor, sunlight flooding in every morning. That's when the calls started. First, my mom. The roof's leaking. Robert, can you help fix it? I sent the money, no hesitation. Then the water heater broke. It's freezing, and your nephew's still small. More money, then a new sofa, a fridge, even repainting the house so the neighbors won't laugh. I kept saying yes, hoping for one thing. Thank you, Robert. We're proud of you. But those words never came. Just more requests. Like I was an ATM with a smile. I thought I was strong enough to handle it. But everything changed in 2015. I was 45, sitting in my office on the 15th floor in Seattle, reviewing candidates for the Sacramento facility manager position, when a Facebook notification popped up. Uncle Greg had posted a new video. I smiled. His videos were my stress relief, usually him showing off a new workbench or telling stories about his neighbor's dog. I opened it, expecting a laugh, but instead, I saw a chaotic party scene, drunken laughter, a shaky camera, and my mom's voice, loud and slurred. "That boy Robert," she said, laughing. "He thinks he's all that, but he's just a leech, a parasite. It's all thanks to James." My dad, standing beside her, clapped in agreement. Exactly. Without James, Precision Dynamics would have collapsed. Robert's just a name. That title's for show. The room erupted in laughter. In the corner, I saw James, holding his kid, not laughing but not defending me either. He just stood there, silent. It felt like a bucket of ice water had been dumped on my heart. Every second of that video was a sharp, merciless cut. After everything, the money, the trust, the effort to rebuild some kind of family, they still saw me as a leech. I turned the video off, my throat too tight to breathe, and called Uncle Greg. "Did you post that on purpose?" I asked, my voice hoarse. He sighed. I didn't realize the phone was recording, but when I saw it, I didn't take it down. I thought it was time you saw who you're really dealing with. I bit my lip until I tasted blood. They called me a leech. Uncle Greg. After all I've done, why me? His voice was heavy with sorrow. Because you're the only one in this family who doesn't need to prove your worth. And yet they demand the most from you. They take advantage of your kindness. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at a text from my mom. "Robert, take down the video. You shouldn't let outsiders see our family matters." I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my banking app and canceled every scheduled transfer. No more roof repairs. No more heaters. Nothing. I took a sheet of paper and wrote, "I'm not a leech," etching the words into my mind. The next morning, I logged into my bank account and made it official. All payments to my parents. Canceled. My phone buzzed with messages from my mom. "Sweetheart, that night was a misunderstanding. Everyone was drunk. Don't overthink it. Then, we didn't get this month's transfer. The heater's broken. What are you going to do? We're family." When I didn't respond, the tone shifted. "Stop being selfish. We raised you. This is how you repay us. Without us, you wouldn't have your career." I read every line, feeling disgust, not pain. They didn't need me. They needed my money. That weekend, I sent one final message. "I saw the video. I know where I stand in this family. Don't contact me again." Then I blocked them. At work, James kept his head down, never mentioning the video. He'd been there, heard it all, and chose silence. Part of me wanted to confront him, to scream, "Why didn't you stand up for me?" Just once. But I didn't. I knew it'd drag me back into the pit of rage I'd spent years climbing out of. In an HR meeting, he lingered after everyone left. "Are you okay?" he asked. His voice soft. I looked at him, my face cold. "I'm working. That means I'm okay." He nodded, eyes down. I don't know what to say about that night. I cut him off. "You don't need to say anything. We're co-workers. Let's keep it that way." He walked away, and a clear distance formed between us, not just in the office, but through years of silence. Uncle Greg was the only one I kept close. Every evening, I'd call him, listening to stories about his woodworking or the neighbor's dog. "You did the right thing," he said when I told him about cutting them off. "They don't love you the way you deserve, and you don't have to endure that for one more minute." I didn't cry. I'd run out of tears. I just felt lighter, like the final chain had fallen away. Over the next decade, I threw myself into work, running 3 facilities, traveling for conferences, and planning a 4th in 2025. At 55 years old, I was called into a meeting with the CEO of Precision Dynamics. "Mr. Barry, I'm retiring." "Robert," he said, sliding a folder across the table. "I want you to take over as CEO of the entire company." I was stunned. "You sure?" I asked. He smiled. "I've never been more sure. You work with integrity, for quality, for people. You're the right man for the job." News of my promotion spread fast. Business magazines called me the man who built an empire from silence. I didn't care about the titles, but I thought of Uncle Greg. I drove to his house that weekend, unannounced, and handed him a small box. "What's this?" he asked, squinting. "A ticket to anywhere you want." Venice, Italy. 10-day getaway. All expenses paid. I said, my eyes stinging. You gave me everything. Uncle Greg, now it's my turn. He hugged me tight, just like when I was a kid, and I knew everything I'd accomplished was because of him. That night, I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, looking at the Seattle skyline. A year ago, I was the guy they called a leech. Now, I'm Robert Morgan, CEO of Precision Dynamics, a man who was once dismissed but never gave up. Here's the lesson. Fellas, don't let anyone define your worth, not even family. I spent years chasing their approval, but when they called me a leech, I realized I didn't need it. I cut them off, built my own empire, and found peace. If you've been underestimated, walk away and build a life that proves them wrong. Drop your story in the comments. I want to know how you've handled being dismissed by family. I'll pick one to share next week. Hit subscribe. Check out my other story next to this one. And share this with your buddies. We all need to know how to stand tall and fight back.